Senator Kennedy, I know you're going to sit there with your cute little accent and your folksy charm and defend Trump's authoritarian nominee no matter what I say. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's voice cut through the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room like a blade. She wasn't just testifying, she was performing. One hand was planted firmly on her hip, the other gesturing dramatically at the elderly senator from Louisiana. She had come prepared for a viral moment. Behind her, in large poster boards displayed a collage of tweets, headlines, and unflattering photos, visual props for the execution she had meticulously planned. This was her stage. The topic was the confirmation of Kash Patel for FBI director. But he was almost an afterthought. The real target was the man sitting at the dais. The man she saw as the personification of the past. That's what you do, right? She continued, her voice rising with practiced indignation. A well-honed instrument of political theater. You perform this simple country lawyer act for people who don't know any better. But let me be clear. Senator Kash Patel is a threat to democracy, to the rule of law, to civil liberties, and anyone who defends him. She paused, letting her eyes sweep the Republican side of the committee. Anyone is complicit in authoritarianism. Her voice resonated, playing perfectly to the cameras, to her social media team who were already recording and clipping from the back row, and to the millions of followers who would soon see these exact clips. She had worn her signature red lipstick, a blazer that photographed well, and carried herself with the unshakable confidence of someone who had truly mastered the art of 21st century political combat. So save your Louisiana swamp talk for people who buy it. Senator, she concluded, because the American people see through you. We see through this nominee. And we will not be silent. The hearing room buzzed with reaction. In the gallery, progressive activists, who had lined up for hours to get a seat, applauded wildly. Democratic senators on the committee, sensing the new media narrative, nodded approvingly. CNN's cameras, predictably, captured every fiery angle. This was exactly what Ocasio-Cortez had come for, a confrontation. A viral moment. And potent ammunition for a week's worth of fundraising emails. Senator John Kennedy sat motionless at the dais, his reading glasses perched on his nose, a yellow legal pad in front of him. At 73, he looked every bit the rumpled country lawyer Ocasio-Cortez had just mocked. Cheap suit, slightly wrinkled, hair disheveled, a half-empty coffee cup at his elbow. He hadn't looked up during her entire tirade. He just kept writing something on his pad in his slow, methodical way. At the witness table beside Ocasio-Cortez, Kash Patel sat with a rigid, military posture, his face carefully neutral despite the verbal assault. The former federal prosecutor had come prepared for a difficult confirmation hearing for FBI director. But even he looked surprised by the sheer venom of the attack. Ocasio-Cortez, sensing Kennedy's silence as weakness, turned her attention to the nominee. Believing her first target was neutralized. Mr. Patel, she announced, you are a MAGA loyalist. You've made an enemies list of career FBI agents who dared to investigate Donald Trump. You've promised to come after journalists and critics. You've spread conspiracy theories. You've shown time and again that you value loyalty to a person over loyalty to the Constitution. She held up one of her poster boards, a blown-up tweet from Patel's account. You are exactly what's wrong with Trump's administration. A partisan hack who will weaponize the FBI against political opponents. You are unqualified. You are dangerous. And if this committee confirms you, they will be complicit in the destruction of American democracy. The room erupted. Cheers from the progressive activists in the gallery. Groans from the conservative observers. Reporters typed frantically. Ocasio-Cortez's communications director was already drafting the Twitter thread. AOC destroys Trump's FBI nominee in epic testimony. Chairman Lindsey Graham banged his gavel. Order. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, you've made your position clear. Are you finished with your prepared testimony? I'm finished when. Point of inquiry. Mr. Chairman. Kennedy's Louisiana draw cut through the noise like a blade through silk. He still hadn't looked up from his legal pad. But every person in the room, every reporter, every staffer, every activist, suddenly focused on him. Ocasio-Cortez turned, visibly annoyed at the interruption. Senator, I'm in the middle of. I know, ma'am, and I've been listening. Real careful. Kennedy finally looked up, removing his glasses with deliberate, theatrical slowness. His eyes, usually twinkling with humor, were as hard as flint. You've made some serious accusations about Mr. Patel's fitness for office, Kennedy said, his voice calm. You've questioned his ethics, his loyalty, his qualifications, his character. He paused, folding his glasses and setting them beside three thick, plain manila folders that had been sitting in front of him all along. The folders were labeled in clear, bold handwriting. A. Ocasio-Cortez, campaign finance violations. A. Ocasio-Cortez, ethics and lifestyle contradictions. A. Ocasio-Cortez, false statements and fabrications. But Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, Kennedy continued, before we judge his fitness for office, I think we need to understand your qualifications to make these judgments. See, you've also attacked my character personally, called me a performer, suggested I'm complicit in authoritarianism, dismissed my intelligence. So, character seems to be very much on the table today. AOC's confident smile flickered. Her lawyer, sitting behind her, leaned forward with a new look of concern. This was not in their plan. I have some questions for you, ma'am, Kennedy said, his voice still maddeningly pleasant. Questions about your own campaign finances, your own ethical conduct, your own relationship with truth. Would that be all right with you? Ocasio-Cortez, visibly thrown but still fighting, defaulted to her standard playbook. Senator, I'm not the one being nominated for FBI director. This is a transparent attempt to distract from the nominee's very real threat to democracy. Ma'am, Kennedy interrupted, his voice still infuriatingly gentle. You made this about character when you attacked mine. You made it about fitness for office when you attacked Mr. Patel's. You made it about loyalty, ethics, and truth. Well, I'm simply going to examine your character. Your fitness, your loyalty, your ethics, and your truth. Seems fair, doesn't it? He opened the first folder. Labeled, A. Ocasio-Cortez, Campaign Finance Violations. Now, he said, with the care of a surgeon making the first incision, I want to start with something simple. Your 2018 campaign was managed by two political action committees, brand new Congresses and Justice Democrats. Is that correct? AOC shifted in her seat. My campaign worked with progressive organizations. Yes. Yes or no? Ma'am, were those two PACs managing your campaign? Yes. Good. Kennedy pulled out the first document. And during that campaign, the Federal Election Commission found, and I'm reading directly from their report here, reason to believe that Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for Congress violated federal law by accepting and making excessive contributions and failing to accurately report financial activity. The total amount of violations found was $1.1 million. Is that accurate? The hearing room, which had been buzzing, fell silent. AOC's face flushed. Those complaints were dismissed. This was the defense she had been prepped to give. And it was a fatal error. Conciliated. Ma'am, Kennedy corrected, not missing a beat, not dismissed. That's an important legal distinction. One I'm sure a sharp questioner like yourself understands. Dismissed means no wrongdoing. Conciliated means you settled. It means you paid penalties. In the real world, ma'am, that's an admission of guilt. He looked up over his glasses. So, let me ask again. Did your campaign violate federal election law involving $1.1 million in improper contributions? Her social media team had stopped recording. The matter was resolved, she said finally. By paying penalties, Kennedy finished for her. So, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, you came here to call Mr. Patel unethical and unfit. But you're sitting here, having yourself violated federal election law to the tune of $1.1 million. Do you see the irony in that? He didn't wait for her to answer. He was already pulling out another document from the same folder. The first blow was about her campaign. The second was about her. Now, let's talk about where some of that money went. Kennedy continued. During your 2018 campaign, your boyfriend, Mr. Riley Roberts, received payments from Justice Democrats for marketing consulting. How much did he receive? AOC's lawyer stood up. Mr. Chairman, I object. This line of, "Sit down, counselor," Kennedy said pleasantly, not even looking at him. "Your client made character an issue. Character is now on the table. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, please answer the question." I don't have those exact figures." "I do," Kennedy said. $6 in disclosed payments. But the FEC investigation found additional undisclosed payments, funneled through shared staff arrangements. In total, your campaign paid your boyfriend. But you used intermediaries, cutouts, to avoid the disclosure requirements. That's called hiding payments from voters. Ma'am, some, like myself, might even call that corruption. Chairman Graham leaned into his microphone. "Senator Kennedy, I want to make sure we're staying relevant to Mr. Patel's nomination." "Mr. Chairman," Kennedy replied. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez spent 40 minutes questioning Mr. Patel's ethics and integrity. She has now been proven to have violated federal election law and hidden payments to her boyfriend. Her credibility to judge anyone's ethics is, therefore, directly relevant. I request latitude to continue. Graham, seeing the blood in the water, simply nodded. "Proceed, Senator." Kennedy smiled that slow Louisiana smile and opened his second folder. Labeled, A. Ocasio-Cortez, Ethics and Lifestyle Contradictions. "Ms. Ocasio-Cortez," he said, "this folder contains photographs, financial disclosures, and public records about your lifestyle. Now, you've built your entire political brand on being a working-class champion who struggles just like everyday Americans. Is that fair to say?" "I fight for working people." "That's not what I asked." Kennedy pressed. "Do you present yourself as someone who shares their struggles? A bartender who made it to Congress, but still struggles, right? I came from a working-class background." "Did you?" Kennedy projected an image on the screen behind him. It was a lovely, comfortable-looking, single-family home with a neat lawn. "This," Kennedy said, "is your childhood home in Yorktown Heights, New York. According to public records, it sold in 2016 for $355. The median household income in Yorktown Heights is $96 a year. Nearly double the national average. Your father owned his own architecture firm. You attended Boston University, where tuition is currently over $50 per year." He looked at her, his expression no longer unkind, but forensic. "That's not a working-class background. Ma'am, that's a comfortable, upper-middle-class background, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all, except the lying about it." AOC's face went from flushed to pale. "My family faced financial difficulties." "Every family faces difficulties," Kennedy said, cutting her off, "but you didn't grow up poor. You grew up in a nice suburban home with opportunities most Americans dream of. Yet you've spent 5 years telling working-class people you're one of them. You've appropriated their struggles for your own political gain." He let the accusation hang in the air. "That's stolen valor. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, you've stolen the identity of the working poor to build your brand." He clicked to the next image. It was the one everyone recognized. AOC at the Met Gala. Her back to the camera. The words, "Tax the Rich," emblazoned in red. "And speaking of struggling," Kennedy drawled, "this is you at the Met Gala. Tickets cost $35. You wore a designer dress with 'Tax the Rich' written on it. Who paid for your ticket?" "Ma'am? I was invited as an elected official. So someone else paid $35 for you to attend. That's a gift. Ma'am, a very expensive one. Did you report it to the House Ethics Committee? As required by law?" Silence. "Let's talk about the dress." Kennedy continued. "The designer who made your 'Tax the Rich' dress, Ms. Aurora James, it turns out she, herself, owed over $100 in unpaid state and federal taxes at the time. She had tax warrants against her company in multiple states." The room erupted in a low murmur. This was a new, devastating layer of hypocrisy. "So, let's review," Kennedy said. "You wore a 'Tax the Rich' dress, designed by someone who wasn't paying her taxes, to a $35 a ticket event that you attended for free as an unreported gift, all while claiming to be a champion of the working class. Do you understand, ma'am, why some people might find that just a little bit hypocritical?" The hearing room was in chaos. Reporters were typing furiously. Democratic senators were whispering urgently to their aides. Ocasio-Cortez's carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. But Kennedy wasn't done. He was just getting warmed up. But that was 2021. He said, "Let's talk about your lifestyle today." He pulled out more photos. This is your current apartment building in the Navy Yard neighborhood of Washington, D.C. A luxury building. Rent for a one-bedroom. According to Zillow, $2.700 per month. That's more than twice what the average American pays. This is your Tesla Model 3. Base price, $40. These, he showed another photo, are photos of you getting $300 haircuts at a high-end salon. He looked at her, his voice laced with mock confusion. And yet, you tell your constituents you can barely afford rent in D.C., which is it? Ms. Ocasio-Cortez? Are you struggling? Or are you living in luxury while claiming poverty? I am allowed to live wherever I want. She shot back. Of course you are, ma'am. Kennedy agreed. Of course, but you cannot lie about it. You can't claim to struggle like working people while living in luxury. You can't tax the rich dresses to elite galas. You can't drive a $40 Tesla while telling coal miners to learn to code. You can't have it both ways. That's not authenticity. That's fraud. He closed the second folder with a soft thud. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, he said, his voice laced with something approaching pity. You attacked my character. You called Mr. Patel unfit for office. But we've now established that you violated federal election law, hidden payments to your boyfriend, lied about your background, lived in luxury while claiming poverty, and attended elite events while preaching about inequality. And ma'am, we are just getting started. He reached for the third folder. It was the thickest one. Now, he said, let's talk about your Green New Deal. Let's talk about the 25,000 jobs you killed in New York. Let's talk about your Florida vacation during COVID lockdowns. Let's talk about January 6th. And your staged border photos. And let's talk about your grandmother's GoFundMe. The one you refused, because accepting help from conservatives would hurt your brand. Ocasio-Cortez's hands were shaking. Her lawyer was pulling at her sleeve, urging her to object. Her communications team had packed up their equipment and quietly left the gallery. The woman who had walked in with props and posters and viral confidence now sat trembling. Exposed. And utterly destroyed. The trap had sprung, and the bayou was about to swallow another predator whole. Kennedy took a slow sip of his coffee, savoring the moment. He'd prosecuted cases for 3 decades. He knew when a witness was broken. AOC was broken. Let's walk through your 2018 campaign finances in detail. He began, opening the first folder again. Your campaign was run by 2 PACs. Brand new Congress and Justice Democrats. These PACs and your campaign engaged in what's called illegal coordination. They shared staff, resources, and made decisions together. That's against federal law. The FEC found reason to believe you violated the law, resulting in $1.1 million in excessive contributions and misreported activity. You settled. You paid the penalties. That is an admission of guilt. He then moved to the next document. And where did that money go? To your boyfriend, Riley Roberts. $6 in disclosed payments. But the FEC investigation found additional undisclosed payments, funneled through intermediaries. Why hide the payments? Ma'am, if the work was legitimate, you came here to accuse Mr. Patel of corruption. This is corruption. He pointed to the next folder. Taxes. Your business. Brook Avenue Press. It closed in 2017. It owed $1.870 in unpaid corporate taxes to New York. A tax warrant was issued. You didn't pay it. You didn't pay it for 2 years. You finally paid it in 2019. After you had become famous for wearing a tax the rich dress and demanding billionaires pay their fair share. You were lecturing the entire country on taxes, while you, yourself, were a tax avoider. How do you explain that? The business was struggling, she whispered. So when your business struggles, we should be understanding about unpaid taxes. Kennedy interjected. But when corporations struggle and use legal deductions, they're evil. Do I have that right? He didn't wait for an answer. He moved to the lifestyle folder. You've built your brand on being one of the people. You post photos on the subway. But that's not the whole picture. Is it? He displayed the photos again. The $2.700 a month luxury apartment. The $40 Tesla. The $300 haircuts. The designer clothes. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. You don't live like the people you claim to represent. You perform as one of them. You've appropriated their identity for political gain. It's a fraud. Senator Ted Cruz leaned into his microphone. Senator Kennedy, if I may. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, do you dispute any of these facts? The FEC violations? The boyfriend payments? The unpaid taxes? The luxury lifestyle? Are any of these facts incorrect? AOC looked at her lawyer, who shook his head slightly. I declined to respond to politically motivated attacks. They're not attacks, ma'am, Kennedy said softly. They're facts. Documented, verified, public facts. And if you can't defend your own conduct, you sure as hell shouldn't be questioning Mr. Patel's. Kennedy gathered the documents from that section and moved to his next thickest folder. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move on. Let's talk about the Amazon HQ2 disaster. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. In November 2018, Amazon announced plans to build a second headquarters in Long Island City, Queens, your district. Yes, she said, her voice finding some strength. I opposed corporate welfare. You opposed 25,000 jobs. Kennedy's voice rose slightly. Jobs with an average salary of $150. You opposed a $2.5 billion private investment in construction. And you did it because you claimed the $3 billion in tax incentives was a giveaway. He displayed the economic analysis on the screen. You made a fundamental error that anyone with basic economic literacy would understand. Those weren't $3 billion in cash. They were tax breaks on future taxes Amazon would have paid. Money that didn't exist yet. The Independent Budget Office estimated Amazon would have generated $27.5 billion in total economic activity. It was a net gain for New York. But you killed it. The community didn't want it. She protested. The community wanted jobs. Kennedy shot back. Your constituents needed those jobs. He pulled out quotes. The Building and Construction Trades Council, a union, supported the deal. They said it would create 11,000 construction jobs. Union leaders, your supposed allies, said your opposition showed a complete lack of understanding of how business works. You made a fundamental economic error. And 25,000 jobs vanished because of your ignorance. And then, he pulled up her tweet. You celebrated. You fundraised off it. You made yourself a national figure. While your constituents in Queens got nothing. That's not leadership. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. That's narcissism. Kennedy moved to his next section of the folder. One more thing on your record of principle. December 2021. COVID was raging. New York City had strict mandates. Masks required. Indoor dining limited. You supported all of it. You called people who questioned them selfish and anti-science. Do you remember? The pandemic required precautions, she said stiffly. So where were you that December? Kennedy pulled up the paparazzi photos. Ah, yes, Miami Beach, Florida, maskless, at a drag brunch, partying, having the time of your life. While New York businesses suffered under the mandates you supported. The photos showed her dancing, drinking, laughing, all without a mask. You vacationed in Florida specifically because Florida didn't have those mandates, Kennedy said, his voice dripping with contempt. You benefited from the very freedom you voted to deny your own constituents. That's not just hypocrisy, ma'am, that's sociopathic. He then moved to the next item. June 2019. You visited the border, and you staged one of the most cynical political stunts I've seen in 30 years. He displayed the now famous photos of AOC appearing to cry while looking through a fence. These images went viral. Ocasio-Cortez breaks down at border. You called the facilities concentration camps. You were crying at detained children. Or so the story went. He pulled out another document. This is a statement from Ivan Pierre Aguirre, the photojournalist who took those images. He later revealed that the fence you were looking at wasn't even at a detention facility. It was at an entrance to a parking lot. There were no detained children visible. You weren't even at the facility yet. You staged the entire photo op. He displayed the photographer's own Twitter thread. Aguirre wrote, "Just want to be clear. AOC wasn't reacting to seeing detained children. This was a staged photo." His words, not mine. Kennedy looked at her with something approaching disgust. You staged photos of yourself crying. You performed anguish for the cameras. And then you used those fake photos to compare American border agents to Nazis. Your entire political career, ma'am, is performance art, and the curtain is being pulled back. Kennedy pulled out his final section of documents. And speaking of performance, he said, let's talk about your working-class background one more time, because I want to be very clear about this. He displayed the property records for Yorktown Heights. Upper middle class. Your father, an architect. Boston University. $50 a year. You have spent your entire career lying about it. You've told working-class voters you're one of them. When you're not, you've appropriated their identity, their struggles, and their authenticity. And that, Kennedy's voice grew hard, is disgusting. He closed the folder. But here's what truly gets me. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. It's not that you live well. It's that you lie about it. You perform poverty, and you exploit real suffering. He opened his final folder. Let's talk about your grandmother. The room, already silent, somehow became quieter. In June 2021, Kennedy began. You posted photos of your grandmother's home in Puerto Rico. Damaged roof, water-stained walls. Your caption blamed Trump's failure to help Puerto Rico for her suffering. It was very emotional. Very political. The tweet got millions of views. You got tremendous sympathy. And then, he continued, something interesting happened. A conservative commentator, Matt Walsh, saw your tweet, and he started a GoFundMe to help your grandmother. Within 48 hours, strangers, people you would call your political enemies, raised $104 to repair your abuela's home. More than enough to fix the roof, repair the walls, and make her home comfortable. He displayed the GoFundMe page. They donated $5, $10, $50. They donated because they saw an elderly woman in need and wanted to help. Americans coming together, regardless of politics. But then, Kennedy said, his voice dropping to a cold, cutting tone, you rejected the money. Your spokesperson released a statement calling the GoFundMe a spectacle and a cynical stunt. You refused to accept a single dollar. Why? Kennedy's voice rose for the first time. A genuine, powerful anger breaking through. Your own grandmother, who you said was suffering, could have had her home repaired. Strangers raised over $100 to help her. And you said no. He leaned forward. You said no, because accepting help from conservatives would hurt your political brand. You preferred to let your grandmother suffer rather than admit a conservative did a good deed. You needed her to keep suffering so you could keep tweeting about it. What kind of person, he asked, uses their grandmother's misery for political points, and then refuses to let anyone help her? Kennedy returned to his seat and opened his final document. Let me bring this all together. Mr. Chairman, because we've covered a lot of ground today. We started with Ms. Ocasio-Cortez coming here to attack Mr. Patel's fitness for FBI director. She called him unqualified, corrupt, and authoritarian. She made this hearing about character, ethics, and truth. Kennedy began laying out the folders, side by side, creating a visual timeline of her scandals. What we've learned is this. On campaign finance, she violated federal election law to the tune of $1.1 million. She funneled undisclosed payments to her boyfriend. A clear case of self-dealing. On taxes, she failed to pay her own business taxes for 2 years, while demanding others pay more. On lifestyle, she lives in luxury, a $2.700 per month apartment, a $40 car, $300 haircuts, while performing poverty and lying about her upper middle class background. On policy, she killed 25,000 high-paying jobs in her own district through sheer economic ignorance. On truth, she supported COVID restrictions in New York while vacationing maskless in Florida. She staged photos of herself crying at a parking lot fence to manufacture a kids in cages narrative. And on character, she exploited her own grandmother's suffering for political theater. And then refused $104 in charity for her, letting her continue to live in disrepair to protect her political brand. Kennedy looked at Chairman Graham. Mr. Chairman, this is the person who came here to judge Kash Patel's fitness for office. This is who questioned my character. He turned to look directly at AOC. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, You're 35 years old. You've been in Congress for 5 years. In that time, you've passed exactly 4 bills. 3 of them were renaming post offices. Your entire career is built on social media, viral moments, and performing outrage. You have no legislative accomplishments, no policy successes, no actual achievements, just theater. Mr. Patel, he continued, has spent his career actually serving America. Federal prosecutor, Department of Defense, National Security Council. He has security clearances. He has qualifications. He has a record of service. Kennedy's voice grew softer, but more intense. The question before this committee isn't whether Kash Patel is fit to be FBI director. The question is whether Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is fit to judge anyone's character. And based on the evidence presented today, the answer is unequivocally no. He closed the folders. Mr. Chairman, I move that we end Ms. Ocasio-Cortez's testimony. She has zero credibility. Her presence here is a distraction from the actual business of this committee. Chairman Graham looked at AOC, who sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. Her lawyer was whispering urgently in her ear, but she seemed unable to respond. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, Graham asked, do you have anything to add? She looked up, at Graham, then at Kennedy, then at the cameras that had captured her complete and total destruction. Finally, she just shook her head. A small, defeated gesture. Then you were dismissed, Graham said. AOC stood on shaky legs and walked toward the exit. As she passed Kennedy's seat, she paused, but said nothing. She just walked out of the hearing room, not as a conquering hero, but as a fraud who had been exposed. Her carefully constructed image, the authentic voice of the working people, the brave resistor, it all lay in ruins behind her. The video clips went supernova. Not just viral, supernova. Within 2 hours, Kennedy's systematic destruction of AOC had been viewed 200 million times. But this time, the narrative was different. The media, which she had relied on, couldn't spin it. Kennedy hadn't used rhetoric, he'd used facts. The Washington Post fact-checker confirmed the campaign violations. The New York Times confirmed the Amazon job losses. CNN's own fact-check confirmed the timeline of the GoFundMe scandal. The political fallout was immediate. Nancy Pelosi, when asked about the hearing, gave an ice-cold response. The House Ethics Committee will review any necessary matters. No defense, no support. The squad went silent. Within a week, the House Ethics Committee announced a new, formal investigation into her campaign finances. Within 2 weeks, a popular, moderate Democrat from Queens, Mike Gianaris, announced he would launch a primary challenge against her, and his campaign was immediately flooded with donations from her former supporters. 6 weeks later, AOC announced she would not seek re-election, claiming she wanted to focus on grassroots organizing outside the confines of Congress. Everyone knew the truth. She had been forced out. Her credibility shattered. Meanwhile, Kash Patel was confirmed as FBI director by the Senate. The vote was 53-47, with 3 moderate Democrats breaking ranks to support him. Months later, on a warm April evening, Senator John Kennedy sat on his back porch in Madisonville, Louisiana, teaching his 8-year-old grandson, Johnny Jr., how to bait a hook. "Papa," the boy asked, "my teacher showed us that video again. The one where you made that lady cry. Were you scared when she called you names?" Kennedy chuckled, casting his line into the bayou. "No, son, not even a little bit." "Why not?" Kennedy looked at the dark water. "'Cause I had the truth on my side, Johnny. And truth is like this bayou. It might move slow. People might try to dam it up, redirect it, or muddy it, but it just keeps flowing. And eventually, it washes away everything that isn't real. You can't stop the truth, son. You can only delay it."